CardGamesTV1 Podcast, holding on to your staples. Something I noticed is that a lot of players aren't doing is trying to collect some, staple floodgates, right? Um, Generic cards, right? And that's what staples are, is essentially generic cards you can use at any time in any deck, especially if you need them for certain things. Like you should have playsets of kaijus, you should have playsets of spear mode, lava golem, Volcanosaurus. No, I said it wrong. I meant Volcanic Queen, Santa Claus, because he's searchable through Sangan and other cards. Um, let's see what else they have. Even something as simple as like a Fog King, which prevents tribute summoning. Master of Strix, which prevents tribute summoning or tributing, so it prevents kaijus and spear mode and stuff like that. So if you build a board and you don't want it to be broken by lava golem or spear mode, then that's where the Master Strict comes in, right? Master Strict, you have your monsters protecting the Master Strict, and there you have essentially an unbreakable board because you can stop their spell cards like their evenly match and their lightning storms, right, from breaking your board. But you can also prevent spear mode and lava clones and kaijus, right? Another way you can prevent like spear mode, kaiju, and stuff like that is with rivalry warlords, golden maps. So those are two things to consider. So you should have those cards. Then light imprisoning mirror, shadow imprisoning mirror, you should have because those shut down light decks and dark decks, and skill drain, which is a generic version of light imprisoning, shadow imprisoning, and the list goes on. Right? You should have. I recommend have stuff like threatening roar, wabaku, things of that nature. Cards that can make it where your opponent, a 1 day piece. Cards that makes it where your opponent can't kill you in one turn. Another card that's decent is Rainbow Life. So if your opponent tries to like burn you or OTK, or tries to like because Wabaku and threatening doesn't stop burn effects, so your opponent could like do some burn combo, but Rainbow Life would actually gain you life instead of you losing life from some burn strategy. Then there's obviously hand traps. There's some hand traps that some people don't even consider, like Hain Water, which is good against burn FTKs. Um, Curie Photon is nice because it could, for 2,000 life points, you can prevent battle damage and effect damage for a turn, and you can use on either player's turn, which is extra nice because if you have a strategy that requires you to attack your opponent's monsters or something, being able to pay 2,000 life points so you don't take battle damage for the turn comes in handy when you're trying to ram a whole bunch of monsters into your opponent's monsters for some whatever reason you're doing, right. Um, I've done stuff like that. Let's see. Let's say there's an effect that says you gain 500 life when a monster dies by battle. So you single summon, make Colossal Fighter, right? Then you use Curry Photon or Curry Photons to so you don't take battle damage and effect damage for the turn. So then you attack with a Colossal Fighter because Colossal Fighter's effect will activate where you could bring it back from the graveyard with its own effect, and you can keep attacking the same monster over again. And because you're gaining life every time you're attacking, and since you're not taking no battle damage, you're just gaining life instead of losing life every time you attack with Colossal Fighter, right? So there's like an infinite life gain combo right there, just because of one hand trap and then two other cards to facilitate the combo, right? But that's the thing. A lot of sometimes some of these cards combo other cards and create a strategy, right? So look into these other hand traps. The classic Karibo, Battle Fader, Gores, Tragodia, things like that. Can prevent OTKs. What else? But the main thing is like you got to hold on to these generic cards. Like you should definitely have a collection of 10 of generic cards that you see that have potential, because there's a lot of cards that like have decent effects. Like, ooh, this could be a floodgate under the right conditions. All right, let me hold on to it. That's what I do. I hold on to cards that have potential that I could use. Like Dimensional Feature, Microcosmos, stuff like that. dimension shifter, and the list goes on, right? Even stuff like the artifact cards, holding on to those, like things that have potential to be a side deck card or meta staple or whatnot. You should hold on to them once you get it, or at least try to get them, especially if you can get them for cheap. And that's the thing. A lot of the stuff like hand traps, a lot of the old staples have been reprinted multiple times, so you have no excuse not to have them now. Don't wait until the card gets popular and then you want to buy it, because DD Crow used to be dirt cheap. Now it's worth money, and Drawn Lockbird and same thing like that. So you should have these types of staples. And the thing is, you should be looking for your own staples. Stuff like Book of Eclipse, Swords of Concealing Light, Book of Moon, Enemy Controller, even some band cards. That's another thing you should have. You should also have band cards. Collect them. Once they unban harpies, like, oh damn, the harpies that I held on to, I can play them now. Oh, Change of Heart's playable is unbanned. Cool. I got Change of Heart that I held on to, and Card Destruction, and the list goes on. Like, I got a lot of banned cards, and a lot of the old cards that used to be banned are now not banned. So now we can use them again, which is awesome. It's been 20 plus years, and we can use these cards again. So we will. And that's the thing. Always look for monsters, spells, traps that can be used as, for state in any deck, and can be used as, side deck cards at least. And that's the main thing I'm trying to point out there is, like, I know it's a lot of people who've been playing. Understand if you're a new player, that's a different story. But if you've been playing this game for a couple months to a year or longer, you have no excuse not to have staples, not to have floodgates and hand traps. I shouldn't be hearing people complain that they don't, that the staples are expensive, hand traps are expensive, blah 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 is expensive. Like, it makes no sense. You gotta be complaining things are expensive when you should already have the stuff that you need. I understand new players complaining, not old players. And that's the thing I see a lot, is a lot of old players bitching and complaining about things that don't make sense to be bitching and complaining about. Crying over nothing. Making nothing into something. Trying to make a drama or issue about something when it ain't even that deep. It ain't that big of a deal. But anyway, so get what you can get your hands on. Always look for reprints. You should look into the reprint sets and try to find some decent cards, right? Good cards like Sound Judgment, that's a good card. Definitely look into counter traps. Counter traps are really, really good cards. They're definitely very useful. A lot of times, counter traps are better than hand traps, especially if you go first, because they bypass certain things. Because remember, a lot of people are trying to outplay hand traps. So I rather go the route of letting my opponent play their cards, because I know they're already going to try to stop and outplay hand traps. So there's no point in playing hand traps against their deck. Just let them play their cards, and then I just break their board, and then make sure I have counter traps. So that way, if they do try to do some stuff, I can use the counter traps to counter whatever they're trying to do. And like I said, they will always try to counter stuff with monsters, right? Those summon monsters that can negate, Omni negates, right? So using counter traps to beat those Omni negates is the way to go. It's the way I do it. And like I said, man, you gotta have doubts. It's not enough to have the staples. It's not just stuff that you use to make your deck function, but it's stuff you use to help you, deal with how your opponent's deck functions, right? So that's where floodgates, come into play. That's where hand traps come into play, right? Those kind of things. You gotta make sure you have, what you need when you need it, in case you need it. But the most important thing you should always be working on and improving on, because cards is one thing, it's you as a player. Your skill level, your knowledge, your experience will always trump a card, right? Granted, we need cards to actually play the game and to have an effect on the game through cards, but your experience, your knowledge, how you use certain cards do matter. Like you can use your MST in such a way that it technically negates the card, so it acts like a negate. You can use something like a Book of Moon, and if you use it right, it basically stops your opponent from like link summoning or synchro summoning or exceed summoning, right? For example, it acts like it negated the summoning of a link monster or exceed monster or synchro monster because you Book Moon one of the materials, right? Obviously, when it comes to synchro summoning, you Book Moon the tuner, right? That shuts that down. When it comes to exceed summoning, you just gotta Book Moon one of the monsters, so that way they don't have two or more monsters with the same levels. And when it comes to link summoning, they just need face up monsters, period. So make sure Book Moon one of them, so that way they don't have a face up. That way they're missing one material, right? Which is always good. And let's see. But that's basically it, just I notice a lot of people don't, because I've been hearing that some people have been like selling off their staples. And it's like, why? I understand selling your high rarity copies of your staples for the lower, to get the lower rarity, that makes sense. But to just get rid of your staples, you know, flat out, but then later be like, oh, I need my DD Crows. It's like, you should have held on to them. Why did you get rid of them in the first place? If you weren't getting rid of the high rarity ones so that we can get the low rarity ones, so now we can, have money to put towards everything else. That's what I've been doing. I've been liquidating a lot of my hollows because I prefer common cards. So since there are common versions of some of the cards that I'm playing, I'm selling off the hollows so that way I can just quickly buy the commons and have my common cards. That's how I roll.